So
Should we take a moment?
yeah. All right,
All right,
here we
take it
are.
away.
I guess this is Owen. I'm Jonathan. We're some dudes from the internet, and we're gonna talk.
After numerous conversations, we figured it would be beneficial to record one. So, Jonathan, if you want to introduce yourself, maybe your story.
Sure, yeah. So my story is very similar to yours. Very cushy, Luciferic. Not very religious upbringing at all. My parents kind of went to church occasionally. I went to a very liberal arts private school, video games. And then I went away to college, and at college my roommate there asked me if I would be interested to try acid, LSD, and I did that, and now we're here, as you said, I think in your video. Yeah, it was kind of definitely. I think maybe we should talk about that a little bit at the start. Yeah.
So, I think to start, we could talk about maybe the analogy between psychedelics and what happens in Genesis with this sort of dichotomy between the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life. Off the top of your head, which would you think is more of an appropriate analogy for psychedelics?
My personal experience was that it was the knowledge of good and evil, but it was also the fruit of life. You know, that I don't know if that's like, if I'm stirring up some crazy heresy or something, but I think that it's definitely, I'm reminded of Jordan Peterson talking about like how the psychedelics are kind of, people can encounter like the shadow, that being like the elements of yourself that you have kind of sidelined. And that definitely happened in the sense that I came face to face with a lot of my flaws and my weaknesses, and also my capacity for evil and other people's capacity for evil. So that was like, oh man, there do be good and evil out here. And but then it was also like this overwhelming, like I feel like that's when I first kind of felt the presence of the Logos, I guess you would say, and like this deep agapic love that is so emblematic of Christianity, and that connection to reality. Like I felt like it kind of, like if life is this buzzing, it's like I was out of phase or out of sync with that buzzing, and then all of a sudden it just smacked me in with it, and it was kind of like I wasn't really ready for that at all. It was like being thrown overboard into waves, and but in the long run, like I think it's undeniable that like so many people have kind of they've gotten a taste of this, whether you want to call it the spiritual aspect of reality or like the ground of being, the love that moves the sun and the other stars, and it gives them this taste for that, and then they find themselves in this pursuit to kind of align with that more and to learn about the traditions that are there for acclimating oneself to this reality and embracing it and living it out to the fullest. And I think it's pretty, it's kind of a question that, I don't think anything was chance. So that the fact that at the end of the 20th century, we start having this psychedelic thing coming up, I think this is something that is to be integrated, like psychedelics cannot just be ignored, I don't think that's the way, because clearly they have this wild set of attributes, so it's like, how do we deal with this? I know that you personally, I don't know like how far you go in terms of its metaphysical significance or
Right.
whatever. So please, yeah, please.
Well, I'll say this. So I think you hit the nail on the head with the idea that it exposes you, psychedelics expose you to the ground of being and the absolute truth, the logos. Something that we've spoken about before, which I think we can get into here, is about the uh, divine liturgy and how liturgy isn't, I suppose, as mystical as it could be, as transformative as it could be.
Mhm.
Like maybe that's just me, but I think that there, like in the fact of how atheist basically Western society has become, or just humanity in general, shows that like we've sort of failed ourselves in the construction of these traditions. And so I'll just come out and say it could be that psychedelics is part of this medicine, it's part of the cure.
The context in which you do this experience, is super important. And it's not just the context of like who you're with and where you are, it's also like the narrative that you inhabit. And this is super relevant in your worldview, your understanding of like the reality of spiritual beings and stuff like that. And like defense against the dark arts and all this, like you gotta have training, and you have to be like, you don't have to, of course, but it's advisable that you are like trained. Yeah. So it's like the perfect context for psychedelics is like if psychedelics are going to turn out okay for culture, like our reintegration of them, it has to be, and I hope it has to be, yeah, it has to be. And also I think that it's kind of it does bring back something that is like missing in the modern church services. I think there's of course beautiful church services out there. You know better than I do, being a member of the Coptic Church, and but yet, our modern sentiments and our modern way of thinking makes it very difficult for us to have the eyes to see the mystical nature of the patterns that we're participating at the liturgy. It's like if you truly are able to see what you're participating in, it's a very mystical experience, even if there's no bells and whistles. However, I think that the psychedelics would definitely assist with that, and is needed in some sense. It's like Christians.
I think it's necessary.
Yeah, like Christian.
Just going to church as I have, like it's astounding how much people just take it for granted, and I really think that it is impossible to fully grasp like the weight of of unifying heaven and earth within the modern framework. And I think there's no going back naturally. The only way I see us fixing this is pharmacologically. Like we have to encounter an anomaly that is just so jaw-dropping and unambiguous, and
yeah, because that's what happened to both of us. Like I'm sure you'd agree that it can be done in other ways. Like you can do mystical spiritual practices, meditate, fast, stuff like this, and this can give you that radical encounter with God. But it's kind of like we're running out of time here, like in a sense.
Yeah, we have so many people that fasting is not going to be enough.
Yeah,
no matter how much they pray, and
they probably won't do it either.
I can say it with absolute certainty that it will never be enough. And for me, it would have never been enough. It never would have worked out. And I tried it so long, and like I was trying to believe in spite of my disbelief, and it never came. And the only thing that pulled me out of that and brought me to where I am now is psychedelics. And it's and like I'm a catechumen now in the Oriental Orthodox Church, and maybe I'm just built different, but I doubt it. Like I really think that the church has to integrate psychedelics into its tradition. Because people are taking psychedelics and they're doing it in the narthex of narthexes. They're doing it at parties alongside alcohol and sex and rock and roll
and running into really bad issues, like the misunderstandings and the embarrassing things that can happen to people, the breakups and like the arguments and the spirit. People have encountered horrible things on psychedelics and had, in terms of experiences, and also spiritual beings, I've never had a real encounter with like a spiritual being during a psychedelic trip that was like in a lucid sense where I was like, oh yeah, there is a spiritual being. But you know um you know I've had friends who had like really hard experiences.
It also comes down to consecration. Like when if the bread and the wine are not consecrated, then they're just bread and wine. But once they offer themselves up and participate in the liturgy, then they're the flesh of our Lord. And so maybe there's a analogy there. Like when a mushroom is just popped at a party, it's just a mushroom, and it will lead people further into themselves. But if it's taken in that sacred context, then it is, in a sense, consecrated.
Yeah.
Out of yourself and into something greater.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
I think that there is no going back. Like, Pandora's box has been opened. So many people just want to brush it under the rug. Not just psychedelics, but also all of the, Eastern sort of philosophies and stuff. Just say, no, it's all just demons. I think if this stuff isn't integrated, then the church as we know it will die. And I think that is what's going to happen. What were some of the messages that you felt like you received on that phone? Like, what were those key experiences that sort of actually brought you to where you are now, and has made you not who you were?
Yeah. All right. Well, the message, the purpose of my conversation with Gavin, like the purpose of uploading that, was kind of to communicate what I was shown during my psychedelic trips, and I don't know how effectively I did that or not. That was recorded in May, but I saw that there was that, like Al had said in his video, there is an information exchange going on between us. I'm forgetting the exact quote, but that's far richer and more subtle than the one that we know, the one that we know. And this recognition, showing that if we learn to interact with this subtle information exchange in a better way, that it can create really strong resonance between people, and syncing up and clarity between people. And so all that kind of played out through my friendship with my roommate, and like my own personal psychology and like the transformations that came with trying acid, like dropping the persona, trying to be vulnerable and stuff like that. And it was really kind of unfortunate how it played out, because I had this one particular experience where I saw a cube rotating with an eye on each face of the cube, big red and yellow wiggly lines, and like it's very hard to describe those experiences, but it was kind of, that was the coalescence of this insight about the importance of nonverbal communication, and like what the heights of what might be possible if we find a right relationship with it. And my vessel wasn't really prepared to receive that, and neither was my roommate ready to see somebody so moved in that way. And so it immediately became confounded and confused in my mind and his. Like if you're kind of obsessed with nonverbal communication, it's hard to do it naturally. Like it doesn't really come as naturally because you're always thinking about it. It's like if you're trying to dance and you're always thinking about the dance moves, right? And so that kind of cut me off from my roommate. And then my girlfriend was alienated from her as well. And eventually I went back home, and my family was dead set on finding out what was up with me, because clearly something had changed, And so eventually, reluctantly, I explained, yeah, I did acid and I'm having a hard time, you know, and uh, and since then, I've unfortunately, like, I've lost a lot of friends, or at least alienated them. Hopefully, not lost for good, but and it's been a long process of like trying to understand what the hell happened, like what kind of struck me, but really to articulate it, it's because I understand it at a non-verbal level. Like I feel like we could just like sit here and have a nice moment of silence and connection and meet each other in peacefulness and agapic love, but to explain it, people want to know, I would like to articulate it. So that's been very difficult. And yeah, your question was what happened in what was like some of my big trips. And so they were really about like my connection with my roommate and like the wild self-reflections and syncing up with people and like being seen by others and seeing others. And then it kind of culminated in a vision of like what the full extent of this might be. Yeah, and then it's been a process of like trying to articulate and understand that. And it wasn't until I came upon the videos of Galahad Adonis, who spoke about something in a very similar way. When he spoke about true vision and the logos. It was after he posted the logos where he's talking about the symbolic nature of language. How all of our, I suggest you watch the video, people. I reached out to him and I explained my kind of what I was talking about, and that's basically like the gist of my story.
So I guess my take, or at least going off of what I heard, is it was almost like a shedding the garments of skin sort of situation. Like you bore witness to the glory, to the secret that cannot be told, mm-hmm. and showing other people led to some miscommunications, and it sort of forced you into this new life where everything behind you that wasn't anything more than lukewarm was burnt off. And
well, I can't say that part, like there's still remaining habits and stuff like that, and things that psychological attributes from my childhood and stuff like that, that are difficult to totally move past, of course. But in general, that's about right, yeah. The other thing I would add is that there's also like the aspect of love and agape and stuff like that. And like seeing the eschatological significance of this, or at least that's the way that I perceived it, because like it was like a personal apocalypse for me, of like the veil fell away and it's like I was naked, and it was also like everyone else was suddenly naked, and a lot of people don't like to be naked, and a lot of people, if you're like, yo, by the way, you're naked, they're like, no. So I dealt with a lot of that, but ultimately, like the apocalypse at like a grand scale or a collective scale, and like if everyone saw that this is how language works, I realize how arrogant that might sound, but that's just kind of how it played out. So if everyone could see this, and find a right relationship with this aspect of our communal being, there could be this unveiling that allows people to meet each other and creates this kind of spiritual singularity where like I think of it like a meme, or like you remember how dabbing was a thing and everyone was dabbing all of a sudden? It's kind of like a meta one of those where it's like not just the dabbing becomes the meme that spreads. It's like a realization of what that is. It's not one of the individual movements, but it's the idea of the movement itself. It's the realization that like we communicate to each other, and this is foundational to our interactions. And it's like once we realize how foundational this is to society, and we can find an intentional relationship with it. It's kind of like a tech singularity, but it's also a human singularity. I talked to Tommy about this of CTMU singularity, and he suggested that I refine my description of like how it's technological in nature. So I think an interesting connection is the difference between, or like the connection between technology and magic. The confrontation with Lucifer is also a confrontation with magic and the mind and technology, and the way that Tomberg talks about magic, he talks about good magic and bad magic, and that's kind of how I think about it. It's like it's a magic that we're all always doing. We're all always using this magical technology of language, but right now we don't really have a right relationship with it, so I think that that's kind of, we're being forced into finding a right relationship with it. Like this is all messed with by digital technology, because right now, like this messes with me a lot personally, because I think about this stuff so much, for better or for worse, that, like right now we're talking, we're not looking at each other's eyes, we're looking at the screen, I have to look up there, Yeah, maybe we should talk about that real quick at the end here, is like, when it comes to like the internet, obviously the internet can be, can get in the way. It's like these garments of technology between us. It's like all these layers of clothing, and it prevents this true contact. However, obviously we wouldn't have met each other, without the internet, and we wouldn't have come across all the things we've learned through YouTube and stuff. So like, I guess, what are your thoughts in terms of like digital intimacy? Yeah, like do you think this is like a possibility? Do you think that like people have to be embodied in the same space outside of the internet to have true communion with each other? Because that's really the thing that's so moving to me about this, is like the true communion that is possible between individuals, and it's like, how do we get more of that in reality ASAP, because that's what I think that the New Jerusalem is that eventually it's just all things are in that true communion with each other. Yeah, it all comes together. It's like the way that Griffin puts it is it's like a macrocosm of the human body, where all the cells are participating together in this vast symphony, this biological symphony and spiritual symphony, So like, how does the internet, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the first place my mind goes is like how the internet in its current state is a failed attempt at that. With the widespread pornography stands as like, a stand-in for that true intimacy.
Yeah.
And then there's also the pitfalls with VR.
Yeah, we're doing this on Zoom right now. Ugh.
Yeah, so like,
because I mean, no matter how far Mr. Zuck goes with his metaverse, I have a feeling like it's not ever gonna, there will always be something missing,
Yeah, I think that's where cybernetics come in, when eventually, like, it's not just going to be, technology isn't just going to be something that we add on top of ourselves, but it'll be integrated into who we are. And then we won't connect just like through a screen or through goggles, but it will, it'll almost verge on what we see in like the Avatar cinematic universe, where people just plug in this biotech.
Yeah, well, this is kind of what I'm saying, is like, I don't think that's necessary, and I don't think that it'll work. Like, I don't think that'll ever, I always think it's a degradation from true experience of reality. It's like more garments. Technology can increase your power, but there's always trade-offs. It's like this whole like techno-gnostic idea of like, it's not gonna happen naturally, so we have to make it happen. And it's like it's like people who can't be intimate, so they try and make plugs in their brain so they can plug into other people because they don't know how to give a hug. It's like, so.
All right, yeah, that was pretty profound right there.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so that's my intuition, is that I think that there, I don't think that, I think that technology, like the internet, should always lead people towards face-to-face interactions, like, it's like, how do we find a relationship with the internet where it's like we can meet new friends and we can make cool projects and share ideas and learn, um, without it directing us away from each other. Like, how can it lead us always to come back towards those group meals and stuff like that? It's like,
It's just up to us, like to just put ourselves out there and to take advantage of the technology. But
mhm,
whereas, in the present state, like technology is taking advantage of us, but we
yeah,
really have to make the machine work for us and
yeah, that's a good way of
hop
putting it.
on. Just, put
Mhm,
ourselves out there and allow ourselves to be vulnerable, I guess, to some extent, as
mhm,
queer as that sounds. And because that's the only way we're going to make progress. Everyone's kind of just waiting for the next upload by someone else. That way they can like, comment, and subscribe. Consider this almost a call to action to anybody watching. Like, go record yourself just rambling in the woods. Share what you're interested in. And
mhm,
prioritize making these connections.
yeah.
Participate and invite others to participate with you, so that way we can all come together.
Be deliberate about it, to be deliberate about, our use of technology, to be intentional with it. Yeah, that's really what's up, I think. Yeah.
So I think that these are going to be my last words. If
Hopefully not for your whole life, just like for the call.
just for this conversation,
Yeah.
if one thing comes out of the fact if one thing comes out of me putting myself out there and engaging with this technology and trying to find communion, then like you and I just being able to communicate like this will be more than enough for me. Like, hit us up, hit me up, hit up
True,
John. We're
man.
just we're just
We're out
some
here.
guys.
Yeah, man. We
We're out.
got Owen out here. He's trying to move to Alaska, perhaps, maybe somewhere else. I'm also very attracted to the idea. This is the thing, man. We can use the internet to find people who are similar in temperament and interests and goals and etc. But like, to hopefully meet up in person. That's kind of what I'm saying here. It's like, people have to,
Let's commune, y'all.
yeah, for real. So,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
man.
Last words, Jonathan. I love you, dear viewer.
Easy,
I love
man.
you too, man. Like,
Yeah, much love. Pleasure talking with you, and hopefully we'll do something similar again. All right.
all right, man.
All right. Peace, bro. See ya.